The truth is, people don't regret losing what they never truly valued to begin with. And value is not about what you look like, how nice you are, or how much you give. Real value comes from how you see yourself. If you want someone to regret losing you, it starts with you learning to never lose yourself in the first place. When someone meets you, they're not just experiencing your personality. They're experiencing your standards, your energy, your level of self-respect. And if you don't know your value, if you're constantly second-guessing yourself or chasing their approval, it creates a silent permission for them to undervalue you too. You teach people how to treat you. Not with your words, but with what you tolerate, what you accept, and what you let slide. So many women fall into this trap of believing that if they just do more, give more, prove more, then that person will finally realize how incredible they are. But that's backward. You don't convince someone of your worth, you embody it, you live it. You set the tone from the very first interaction. This is who I am. This is what I accept. This is what I bring. And this is the standard. A person regrets losing you when they experience the absence of something they couldn't find anywhere else. Your peace, your emotional maturity, your joy, your strength. But here's the catch. They only feel that regret if you actually owned those qualities and made them part of your identity. Not something you only put on when you're afraid of losing them. This isn't about pretending to be confident. It's about actually becoming the person who doesn't need anyone to complete them. Someone who's kind, loving, and giving, but never from a place of fear or desperation. Someone who offers their heart fully, but is also able to walk away if the treatment they're receiving doesn't align with their self-worth. A woman who knows her value doesn't panic when a man pulls away. She pauses, she observes, and if she sees a pattern of inconsistency or disrespect, she adjusts her level of access accordingly. She doesn't beg to be chosen. She knows she's the prize. And if someone doesn't recognize that, she won't try to convince them. She simply moves in the direction of people who do. That's how you become the person he regrets losing, not by manipulating over investing or making yourself smaller to fit his comfort zone, but by stepping into your power consistently, unapologetically, and with a calm certainty that you are enough. That kind of self-worth leaves a mark, and the moment you walk away it echoes. Because in the end, people don't regret losing the person who begged them to stay. They regret losing the one who never needed to beg at all. One of the biggest shifts you can make in your love life is to stop building your emotional world around someone else's presence or absence. Emotional independence means you are the source of your own peace, not constantly riding the highs and lows of someone else's attention. And let me tell you, nothing is more powerful, more attractive, and more liberating than being the kind of person who chooses someone out of desire, not need. So many people fall into the habit of waiting for that message, that call, that validation. They're constantly on edge asking, what does this mean? Why hasn't he replied? What if he pulls away? This way of living puts your emotional stability in someone else's hands, and once that happens, you've already lost control of your experience. When you're emotionally dependent on someone, you become reactive. If they give you attention, your mood lifts. If they don't, you spiral. That's not love. That's addiction. And when you operate from that place, you start making decisions not from strength, but from fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. And guess what? That energy doesn't just stay inside you. It radiates. It comes through in the way you speak, how quickly you reply, how you handle space and silence. It creates a dynamic where you're giving too much and asking too little. But when you cultivate emotional independence, everything changes. You no longer seek constant reassurance because you know your worth isn't tied to someone else's response. You become anchored. You learn to enjoy someone's presence without fearing their absence. You can say no to a dynamic that doesn't serve you. Not because you're cold, but because your self-respect is intact. This kind of strength doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to maintain balance. It means you're not afraid to be alone, because your life is full and meaningful with or without a partner. You have passions, you have friends, you have goals. And if someone wants to be part of that life, they're welcome. But they're not the center of it. And do you know what happens when you bring this kind of self-possession into a relationship? You flip the dynamic. You become a challenge. Not in a game-playing way, But because you're not easily swayed, you're not trying to impress, you're just being you. Grounded, confident, secure. You're not anxious over silence. You understand that healthy relationships allow space. You don't panic at distance. You observe patterns. And most importantly, you know that you always have a choice. People regret losing those who had the strength to walk away. Not because they were angry or bitter, but because they were whole. When someone realizes they never had control over you, only access to you, that's when the regret hits. Because emotional independence is rare, and rare is unforgettable. Many people confuse love with attachment. They think holding on tightly to someone, no matter how they treat you, is proof of devotion. But real self-respect and real love means having standards even when you're emotionally invested, and that's hard. Because when we like someone, when we feel that chemistry, when we've imagined a future, it's so easy to let our standards slide just to keep the connection alive. But here's the truth. If keeping someone means betraying your boundaries, ignoring your needs, or settling for less than you deserve, then what you're holding on to isn't love. It's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of not being chosen. And fear never builds a healthy relationship. It just keeps you stuck in one where you're constantly proving you're worthwhile abandoning your standards. Standards are not rules you impose to control someone else. They are guidelines you live by to protect your peace, your dignity, and your emotional well-being. They are the silent messages you send out into the world that say, this is how I expect to be treated, this is how I value myself, and this is the level I operate on. And the right person will never be offended by your standards. They will be inspired to rise to them. The problem is that many people lower the bar the moment they feel emotionally attached. They begin to make excuses. He's just busy. Maybe I'm asking for too much. At least he came back. They start accepting inconsistency, mixed signals, disrespect, just because they're afraid of letting go. But your attachment to someone should never be stronger than your attachment to your own values. If you want someone to respect you, to prioritize you, to take you seriously, you have to start by showing them that your standards are non-negotiable. And not just when things are good, especially when things get complicated. When they pull away, when they test boundaries, when they start giving less. That's when you show them who you really are. That's when you hold the line. And here's the beautiful thing about standards. When you hold to them consistently, two things happen. The wrong people fall away, and the right people step up. Not because you forced them to, but because they recognize that being in your life is a privilege, not a convenience. Your standards create clarity. They filter out those who are only half in. They prevent you from being dragged into cycles where you're giving everything and getting crumbs in return. Loving someone deeply is beautiful. But it should never cost you your self-respect. You can love someone and still walk away if your values are not being honored. You can care about someone and still say, this isn't enough for me. And that strength, that is what makes someone truly unforgettable. Because at the end of the day, no one regrets losing the person who clung to them. They regret losing the person who loved them fully but refused to stay small just to keep them. There is a massive difference between chasing someone and attracting someone. Chasing comes from a place of fear and lack. It says, I need you to choose me so I can feel worthy. It's filled with anxiety, constant overthinking, overgiving, and the desperate need for validation. But magnetizing, being the kind of person people are drawn to naturally, is rooted in self-worth. It says, I know who I am, and if you don't see it, that's your loss, not mine. The moment you begin to chase someone is the moment you give away your power. You begin to operate from a space of trying to win them over, to earn their attention, to prove your value. You start shifting your energy around what you think they want. You become overly available. You text first every time. You wait on replies like your happiness depends on it. You try to mold yourself into the person you think they'll want. But here's what happens. The more you chase, the less attractive you become. Not because you're not worthy, but because chasing screams scarcity. It says you're the prize, and I'm lucky to be noticed. It sends the message that you're putting them on a pedestal, and no one wants to feel pressured to validate someone else's worth. Attraction fades when it feels like you're trying too hard to be chosen. Magnetizing, on the other hand, is effortless. It's about living a life that's already full, with purpose, passion, and peace. So that anyone who steps into it feels the energy of someone who doesn't need them, but simply enjoys their presence. You don't have to beg for attention. You don't have to overperform. You just are. Confident, centered, radiant. You draw people in not because you chase them, but because they're curious about the energy you carry. People are drawn to confidence. They're drawn to standards. They're drawn to the person who knows their value so clearly that they don't flinch if someone walks away. Think about it. Who regrets walking away more? The person who was constantly available, or the one who remained calm, composed, and self-assured even in silence? Becoming magnetic means doing the inner work. It means getting clear on who you are, what you want, and what you won't tolerate. It means pouring into your own passions, nurturing your relationships, investing in your growth. Because when your life is rich without them, they feel it. And suddenly they're not the center of your world. They're being invited into something already meaningful. Let people come to you. Let them earn your attention. Let your energy do the work. The one who is meant for you will never need to be chased. They'll be pulled in by the gravity of who you are. Because a woman who chases can be overlooked. But a woman who radiates, she's unforgettable. When something doesn't work out the way you hoped, when someone pulls away, breaks your heart, or fails to give you the love you know you deserve, it's easy to become obsessed with the why. You replay conversations in your head. You analyze every message. You wonder what you could have said differently, how you could have been more, done more, loved harder. And slowly, without realizing it, your life becomes centered around a person who is no longer showing up for you. But here's the hard truth. Obsession keeps you stuck in a loop of self-blame, fantasy, and confusion. It takes your focus off the one thing that actually gives you power, your growth. Because obsessing over someone doesn't bring them back. It doesn't fix what was broken, and it certainly doesn't make you feel better in the long run. What does? Evolving, elevating, reclaiming your energy and redirecting it toward your future, not your past. Growth is the ultimate form of healing. When you choose growth over obsession, you're saying, I refuse to shrink myself in the shadow of someone who didn't value me. I am choosing to become better, not bitter. And that shift is everything. It takes the pain and turns it into fuel. It takes rejection and turns it into redirection. It takes heartbreak and turns it into personal power. You don't grow by clinging to what didn't choose you. You grow by choosing yourself. Even when it's hard. Even when you miss them. Even when your heart still aches. Because real growth often begins when things fall apart. It's in the quiet moments. When you're tempted to text, to beg, to chase, that you build the muscle of self-respect. You realize, I don't need them to see my worth. I need to remember it myself. Instead of scrolling through their socials, scroll through your goals. Instead of writing a message you'll regret, write a plan for the next version of you. Instead of asking, why didn't they choose me? Ask, why was I trying so hard to be chosen by someone who couldn't meet me where I was? This is not about ignoring your feelings. You can honor your pain without making it your identity. You can grieve what you lost while still building what comes next. Growth is not a straight line. It's messy, emotional, and full of setbacks. But every step you take away from obsession and toward progress is a win. Every time you choose to invest in your health, your mind, your peace, you raise your value, not just to others, but to yourself. And here's the best part. When you prioritize growth, something magical happens. You become the person they never thought you'd become without them. And that's when the regret sets in. Not because you chased, not because you pleaded, but because you leveled up in silence. While they stayed the same, you evolved. And nothing is more powerful than that. If someone is inconsistent with you, that's already a form of clarity. The problem isn't that they're sending mixed signals. The problem is that you're still accepting them. Too many people fall into the trap of making space for someone who only shows up when it's convenient, when they feel like it, or when they're bored. And the longer you allow that kind of behavior, the more you tell that person, this is okay, you can give me less, and I'll still be here. But if you want to be the person someone regrets losing, you can't be available to everyone, especially not to someone who treats your heart like a backup plan. You have to become unavailable to inconsistency. That means not only identifying it when you see it, but removing access to you when it shows up. When someone is into you, it's not confusing. They're consistent, they call, they show up, they make an effort. If you're constantly wondering where you stand, second-guessing their intentions, or making excuses for their lack of presence, you're not in something real. You're in a situation that's feeding off your hope rather than matching your effort. Being unavailable to inconsistency doesn't make you harsh or unforgiving. It makes you wise. It says, I know my value, and I'm not going to stick around for breadcrumbs when I'm worthy of the whole meal. It's about protecting your emotional energy from people who dip in and out of your life like your feelings don't matter. This also means not falling for temporary charm. Inconsistent people often come back with just enough attention to keep you holding on. They sense when you're pulling away, and they know exactly what to say to reel you back in. But don't mistake occasional effort for real commitment. If the pattern is hot and cold, if you feel anxious more than secure, that's not love. It's emotional chaos. You don't have to make a scene. You don't have to explain yourself endlessly. You just step back, create distance, and let their actions speak louder than their words. You let go of the fantasy that they'll suddenly change, and instead focus on reality, because reality will always show you who someone truly is. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop making space for inconsistency, you create space for something better. You begin to attract people who match your energy, your effort, and your standards. People who are clear, present, and emotionally available. People who see your worth without needing to lose you first. Inconsistency is not something you try to fix in someone else. It's something you walk away from for the sake of your own peace. Because nothing is more powerful than the person who doesn't wait to be mistreated twice. And nothing is more unforgettable than the one who refused to dance with confusion and chose clarity instead. Boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are filters that allow the right kind of love in. A woman who knows her worth doesn't need to shout it. She simply lives it through her standards. And the most powerful way she communicates that worth is by what she tolerates, what she doesn't, and how she responds when someone crosses the line. People don't just learn how to treat you based on what you say. They learn by what you allow. When you radiate self-worth, you're not afraid to say, "This doesn't work for me," not with anger, not with drama, just with quiet confidence. Because you understand that protecting your peace is more important than preserving a connection that costs you your dignity. You don't need to beg for someone to value you. You show them how to treat you by valuing yourself first. And that's where boundaries come in. Too many people mistake kindness for weakness. They test your limits just to see how far they can go. And if you're so afraid of losing them that you bend every time they push, they'll never take your boundaries seriously. But when you calmly hold the line, not once, but consistently, you send a message that's louder than words. I respect myself too much to stay in a space that doesn't. And here's the thing about boundaries. They're not meant to push people away. They're meant to create clarity. They let the right people feel safe with you, and they show the wrong people the exit. They don't have to be hard. A simple "I don't tolerate disrespect," "I won't engage with mixed signals," or "I'm not here for inconsistency" speaks volumes. You don't need to over-explain. You simply stand firm. When you embody this kind of energy, you become magnetic. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're grounded. You're not flustered by temporary attention. You're not easily swayed by charm. You're not afraid to lose someone who isn't meeting you where you are. And that calm strength is what people remember long after the conversation ends. The truth is, boundaries don't repel love. They protect it. They create the conditions where real connection can flourish, where both people know what's expected, what's honored, and what won't be tolerated. That kind of clarity is rare, and because it's rare, it's respected. So don't shrink your standards just to keep someone around. Don't water down your truth just to avoid conflict. The people who are meant for you will never be scared off by your boundaries. They'll rise to meet them. And those who don't, let them go. Your peace is worth more than someone's temporary presence. Because the moment you start enforcing boundaries with grace and consistency, you stop chasing love and start commanding respect. And that shift, that's the foundation of becoming the person they will regret ever losing. One of the hardest things to do after a relationship ends, or when someone walks away, is to let go of the need for closure. We want answers. We want reasons. We want to understand exactly why things didn't work out, because it feels like without that understanding, the pain will never stop. But here's the truth. Sometimes closure is a myth we create to keep ourselves stuck in the past, when the real power lies in moving forward without it. The desire for closure often keeps us trapped in endless loops of overthinking. We rewind conversations, analyze texts, search for hidden meanings, and try to piece together what went wrong. We hold on to the hope that if only we get the right explanation, if only we hear the right words, then we can finally heal. But that's a trap, because sometimes the reasons aren't clear, and sometimes the person who left doesn't have the capacity or willingness to give you the closure you crave. Letting go of the need for closure doesn't mean you don't deserve answers. It means you accept that some questions won't be answered, and that's okay. You don't need someone else's permission or explanation to reclaim your peace. Your healing doesn't depend on their honesty or clarity. It depends on your choice to stop waiting for something that may never come. When you cling to closure, you stay emotionally tied to someone who may already be gone. Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally too. You keep replaying the past and hoping for a different ending, which blocks you from creating a new, better beginning. The longer you wait for closure, the longer you delay your own growth and happiness. Real closure comes from within. It's about accepting reality as it is, even when it's messy or unfair. It's about forgiving. Not necessarily the other person, but yourself for any mistakes or regret. It's about recognizing that your worth and your future don't hinge on understanding why something ended. You can be whole without all the answers. When you let go of the need for closure, you free yourself to focus on what truly matters, your own healing and evolution. You shift your energy from what's lost to what's possible. You stop being stuck in the why and start moving into the what's next, and that's where transformation happens. People who cling to closure often miss out on the opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. They miss the chance to build boundaries, raise standards, and attract relationships that actually serve them. By releasing closure, you create space for new connections, new experiences, and new versions of yourself. Remember, no one else controls your peace, you do. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to stop looking backward and start stepping forward. Even if it means walking into the unknown, because true strength is not found in understanding every piece of the puzzle. It's found in trusting that your life will make sense in time, even without all the pieces. Letting go of closure is not about giving up. It's about gaining freedom. Freedom to heal on your own terms, freedom to grow beyond the past, and freedom to become the person who will never settle for less than they deserve. That is the kind of person no one would ever want to lose. One of the most powerful ways to become the person someone will regret losing is to invest deeply in your own happiness first. So often, people fall into the trap of looking for happiness through someone else's validation, approval, or affection. They think, if only they loved me enough, I would feel complete. Or, if only they noticed me, I'd be happy. But relying on someone else for your happiness puts your entire emotional world in their hands, and that's a risky place to be. True happiness starts within. It's not about waiting for a relationship to fill a void or fix what feels broken inside. It's about creating a life that feels joyful, fulfilling, and meaningful all on its own. When you do this, you become magnetic because people can feel that energy. They see someone who isn't desperate or dependent. They see someone who knows their worth, who is whole, and who brings their own light to the table. Investing in your own happiness means prioritizing your passions, your health, your friendships, and your dreams. It means doing the things that make you feel alive, confident, and authentic, whether that's pursuing a hobby, advancing your career, traveling, or simply spending time alone enjoying your own company. When your life is rich with purpose and joy, you're not just waiting for love to arrive, you're creating a life worth loving. This mindset shift is crucial because it changes the dynamic of your relationship. Instead of clinging to someone out of fear of being alone or insecure about your value, you bring a sense of completeness to the connection. You bring confidence, calm, and an energy that's hard to resist. You stop being needy or anxious and start being attractive and grounded. Investing in your happiness also means setting boundaries around anything or anyone that drains you emotionally or mentally. It means choosing experiences and people that uplift you, not tear you down. You become intentional about where you put your time and energy, and that intentionality translates into self-respect, which is incredibly attractive. Another powerful aspect of investing in your happiness first is that it protects you from settling. When you're fulfilled and content on your own, you won't accept less than you deserve. You won't tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or lack of effort because you know what a joyful life feels like, and you're not willing to give that up for someone who doesn't add to it. People who are truly happy with themselves don't need constant reassurance or validation. They can be vulnerable and authentic without losing their sense of self. This authenticity draws the right kind of people in and repels those who aren't a good fit. In other words, investing in your happiness filters your relationships in a way that's healthy and empowering. Ultimately, becoming the person someone regrets losing is less about changing for them and more about cultivating a life that's so vibrant and fulfilled that your absence is deeply felt. When you invest in your own happiness first, you build an unshakable foundation of self-worth, joy, and confidence. And that's the kind of energy that no one wants to walk away from. Living with authenticity means showing up as your true self, unapologetically and without bending to the expectations or judgments of others. It's about embracing who you really are, your quirks, your passions, your imperfections, and having the courage to stand in that truth every day. So many people get caught up in trying to please others, to fit into molds, or to act in ways that will gain approval. But when you live for others' approval, you lose the very thing that makes you magnetic and unforgettable: your authenticity. Authenticity is what creates real connection. When you're authentic, people don't just like you. They resonate with you. They feel seen because you are genuinely seen. You don't have to perform or pretend, and that freedom makes you incredibly attractive. Conversely, when you act to please, you create a version of yourself that isn't sustainable. Eventually, that mask slips, and people realize they didn't know the real you at all. Choosing authenticity over approval is not always easy. It requires vulnerability and a willingness to risk rejection. But here's the paradox. The more authentic you are, the more you attract people who appreciate you for exactly who you are. This builds deeper, more meaningful relationships because they're based on truth, not facade. When you live authentically, you don't waste time trying to fix or change yourself to fit someone else's ideal. You accept your own value, and you express it boldly. This self-acceptance radiates confidence. Confidence is magnetic. It's what makes someone stop and think, "I can't believe she's just being herself so fully." That's the kind of person who leaves a lasting impression. Moreover, living for approval can create anxiety, confusion, and exhaustion. When you're constantly checking if you're doing enough, saying the right thing, or being liked, you're drained. But authenticity brings peace. It allows you to set boundaries naturally because you're not trying to please everyone. You say no without guilt, yes without hesitation, and you don't apologize for being exactly who you are. When you stop seeking approval, you stop being controlled by others' opinions. This freedom lets you pursue your passions, dreams, and desires without hesitation. It's this kind of self-directed life that makes you a person others admire, not because you try to be impressive, but because you're real and unapologetic. And here's something crucial. Authenticity invites growth. When you're honest with yourself and others, you're open to learning and evolving in a way that's true to your values. You don't change just to keep someone interested. You grow because it's right for you. That ongoing evolution, rooted in authenticity, makes you dynamic and inspiring. Ultimately, the person someone regrets losing is not the one who changed themselves to fit a mold, but the one who lived their truth fully, who loved boldly, and who refused to dim their light for anyone. That is the kind of person no one forgets, and no one wants to lose. At the end of the day, becoming the person someone will regret losing isn't about changing who you are to fit their expectations. It's about becoming the fullest, most authentic version of yourself, the person who knows her worth, sets clear boundaries, invests in her own happiness, and refuses to settle for anything less than she deserves. When you live with that kind of confidence and self-respect, you naturally attract the respect, admiration, and love you want. Remember, you are not here to be anyone's backup plan or second choice. You are here to live boldly, love deeply, and show up with a strength that can't be ignored. The regret someone feels when they lose you isn't about what you gave them. It's about the incredible person you were unapologetically, the peace you embodied, and the standards you set that they failed to meet. So stand tall, protect your peace, and keep growing into the woman who isn't just worth keeping, but impossible to forget. That is the power you hold, and when you claim it fully, you become the person no one would ever want to lose.